Gentlemen, let me ask you something honestly. When you look in the mirror these days, do you still see the man you once were? Or do you see someone quietly giving in to age, to routine, to the same life repeating day after day? I'm not here to pretend wrinkles don't matter. And I'm not here to say time doesn't exist. What I want to talk about is something deeper. Because some men, in their 60s, their 70s, even beyond, still move through the world with the energy of someone decades younger. They don't just look younger. They feel younger. And here's the surprising part. The secret isn't creams. It isn't expensive gyms. And it isn't genetics. It comes down to something far more powerful. The habits they live by. And if you listen closely, you'll realize something. The real question isn't whether you can look younger. The real question is, are you ready to live younger? 1. They remain hungry for life. When you see an older man whose eyes still carry light, whose walk still has rhythm, and whose presence quietly fills a room, something important is happening inside him. He is still curious about life. Not the restless curiosity of youth, but a deeper kind, a quiet sense that life still has something left to reveal. Psychologists have observed something interesting about the human mind. When people stop anticipating new experiences, the brain begins producing less dopamine, the chemical linked to motivation, energy, and vitality. And when dopamine fades, something subtle begins to happen. The body slows. Interest disappears. Life starts to feel smaller. This is why many men don't age because of time. They age because their lives become completely predictable. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, then repeat the same day again. There is nothing ahead that excites the mind. Nothing unexpected waiting around the corner. But men who seem younger than their years move through life differently. They keep a quiet sense that tomorrow might hold something interesting. A book they've never read. A place they've never walked through. A conversation that shifts the way they see the world. You can see this clearly in men who remain vibrant late in life. Take Anthony Hopkins, for example. Even in his 80s, he continues learning new things, painting, playing piano, sharing reflections about life with the same curiosity he had decades ago. At one point he said something simple, yet incredibly revealing. Curiosity is the secret of youth. When a man stays curious, his mind continues exploring the world. And when the mind explores, the body follows. The eyes stay bright. The posture stays upright. His presence carries a certain aliveness that people notice immediately, even if they cannot explain why. But the opposite is just as true. When a man stops searching, his body begins to reflect that resignation. The shoulders drop. The walk slows. The face becomes still and distant. Not because the body failed him, but because the mind quietly closed the door to possibility. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl once wrote, "When a man cannot find meaning, he numbs himself with routine. Routine becomes a form of emotional anesthesia." So when you notice your life becoming too predictable, too safe, too repetitive, it may not simply be comfort. It may be a signal that your curiosity has begun to fade. And the simplest way to change that is not through dramatic transformation. It begins with small acts of exploration. Read something you normally wouldn't read. Learn a skill you once thought you were too old to start. Walk down a street you've never taken before. Start a conversation you might normally avoid. These small moments awaken the mind again. And when the mind wakes up, energy quietly returns. Presence returns. Because a man who remains curious about life remains alive inside it. 2. They release emotional weight. Sometimes you meet a man in his 60s or 70s whose face looks surprisingly relaxed. His posture is open. His walk is light. There is a calm steadiness in the way he moves through the world. Very often, this has little to do with diet or exercise. It has to do with something far less visible. He is no longer carrying unnecessary emotional weight. Many men believe time will automatically heal anger, regret, or resentment. But the human body does not work that way. Psychologists and neuroscientists have shown that unresolved emotions don't simply disappear with the years. They settle into the nervous system. They show up as tight shoulders, a clenched jaw, a stiff back, a tired expression in the eyes. The body becomes a quiet storage place for old disappointments, arguments from decades ago, mistakes that cannot be undone, opportunities that never happened. At first these memories seem harmless. But over time they become like stones in a backpack. Each one small. Yet together they slow a man down. That is why some men appear older than their years even when their health is still good. Not because of time, but because they are carrying the past everywhere they go. Men who age with vitality understand something different. They learn how to put the stones down. Not by denying what happened. Not by pretending the past didn't hurt. But by making peace with it. They take the lesson. And release the weight. You can see this clearly in the life of Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison, he walked out not as a bitter man seeking revenge, but as someone who had chosen not to be imprisoned by anger. He once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it will kill your enemies." Mandela understood something most people learn too late. Resentment punishes the one who carries it. When a man releases that burden, something remarkable happens. His body changes. The shoulders rise naturally. The breath becomes deeper. The face softens. Energy that was once trapped in old emotions becomes available again. And people notice. Not because he is louder or more impressive, but because he feels lighter. Emotionally free men move differently through the world. They do not replay the past every day. They do not argue with memories. They understand that life moves forward, not backward. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote something that still holds power today. Reject your sense of injury and the injury itself disappears. He was not saying that pain never happened. He was saying that suffering continues only when we keep holding on to it. So when you notice tightness in your body, when your mind keeps returning to the same old story, it may be a signal that something from the past is still being carried. The path forward is not forgetting. It is releasing, learning the lesson, accepting what cannot be changed, and choosing not to carry the weight any further. Because the truth is simple. Time alone does not make a man heavy. But unprocessed emotion can. And the moment a man learns to let go of what no longer belongs to him, his body begins to move like a man who has years of life ahead of him. 3. They guard their energy and attention. If you watch certain men as they age, you notice something unusual. They do not seem rushed. They are not constantly pulled in 10 directions. Their movements are deliberate. Their presence is steady. Their energy feels concentrated. This is rarely accidental. These men have learned to protect something most people give away carelessly. Their energy. Psychology has long shown that human attention is a finite resource. Every obligation, every argument, every unnecessary worry drains mental and physical energy. When that energy is constantly scattered, the body begins to reflect it. Sleep becomes shallow. The face looks tired. The nervous system stays tense. Over time, the body carries the quiet exhaustion of a life spent reacting to everything. That is why some men appear older than they truly are. Not because their bodies failed them, but because their energy has been leaking in every direction for years. Men who age with vitality understand this instinctively. They are careful about where their attention goes. They do not say yes to every demand. They do not chase every distraction. They know that every yes given carelessly is energy they may never recover. You can see this clearly in the life of Warren Buffett. Despite managing one of the largest investment empires in the world, Buffett keeps an unusually simple schedule. He once explained that his success came largely from protecting his time. As he famously said, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything." That sentence reveals something deeper than productivity. It reveals sovereignty. A man who protects his time protects his life. When attention is not fragmented, something remarkable happens. The mind becomes clearer. The body relaxes. Decisions become calmer and more precise. Even posture changes. There is no frantic urgency in the way he moves. Just quiet control. This kind of presence also protects a man from one of the most destructive forces of aging, chronic stress. When a man tries to be everywhere for everyone, stress slowly builds in the body. Blood pressure rises. Inflammation increases. Sleep deteriorates. The body carries tension that never fully releases. But a man who guards his attention interrupts that cycle before it begins. He chooses where his energy flows. He engages deeply when something truly matters. And he steps back gracefully when it does not. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus captured this idea centuries ago when he wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, a man must sometimes disappoint others in order to remain aligned with what truly matters. This is not selfishness. It is discipline. When you begin to notice how often your energy is pulled into unnecessary obligations, endless notifications, and other people's emotional storms, it becomes clear how easily life can drain vitality. The solution is not isolation. It is intention. Choose carefully where you invest your attention. Protect the rhythms that sustain your body. Sleep well. Work with focus. Rest without guilt. Because when a man protects his energy, something becomes immediately visible. He does not look like someone being dragged through life. He looks like someone directing it. 4. They treat their body as an ally, not an enemy. If you observe men who remain vibrant well into their later years, you'll notice something subtle about the way they inhabit their bodies. They are not fighting them. Their movements are relaxed but intentional. Their posture is natural. Their breathing is steady. There is no sense of conflict between the man and the body he lives in. Many men, however, develop the opposite relationship over time. They look in the mirror and see only decline. Gray hair. Wrinkles. A slower metabolism. And without realizing it, they begin to treat their bodies like adversaries. They criticize them. They push them aggressively. Or they ignore them completely. But the human body responds poorly to conflict. When a man constantly fights his body, through frustration, neglect, or extreme discipline, tension builds in the nervous system. The muscles tighten. The breath becomes shallow. Movement loses its natural fluidity. Ironically, the harder a man fights his body, the more rigid and older he begins to appear. Men who age gracefully approach the body differently. They treat it as a partner. They listen. They notice what strengthens them and what drains them. They move regularly, but without punishment. Walking. Stretching. Strengthening the body in ways that support life, not ego. This kind of relationship creates a quiet alignment between mind and body. And when that alignment exists, vitality becomes visible. You can see this in men like Clint Eastwood. Even into his 90s, Eastwood maintained a calm, upright presence and continued directing films with remarkable clarity. He never chased extreme training trends or punishing routines. Instead, he followed simple habits, regular movement, moderation, and consistency. He once reflected on aging with a line that perfectly captures this mindset. Take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. That same attitude applies to the body. Respect it. Care for it. But do not wage war against it. The Stoic philosopher Seneca understood this balance centuries ago. He warned against both extremes, neglect and obsession. As he wrote, treat the body rigorously so that it may not be disobedient to the mind. Not abuse. Not indulgence. Discipline guided by wisdom. When a man moves with this attitude, his body responds differently. Movement becomes smoother. Posture naturally straightens. The face relaxes. And there is a certain quiet physical confidence that cannot be manufactured. Because the body is no longer carrying tension from resistance. It is cooperating with the man who lives inside it. If you begin to notice stiffness in your movements, constant fatigue, or tension that never fully leaves your shoulders, it may not be age alone. Often it is the result of ignoring the signals the body has been sending for years. The answer is rarely extreme transformation. It begins with awareness. Move every day. Stretch the body when it tightens. Rest when it asks for recovery. Feed it with respect instead of punishment. Because when a man stops fighting his body and begins working with it, the body often returns the favor. And suddenly, the way he walks into a room feels younger than the calendar says it should. 5. They stay psychologically present in the world. Spend enough time around men who seem younger than their age, and a pattern begins to reveal itself. They are not living in yesterday. They do not sit in conversations repeating how everything used to be better, how the world made more sense decades ago, how life somehow went downhill after a certain year. You rarely hear them speak as if the best part of their life already happened. Instead, their attention is anchored in the present. They are interested in what is unfolding now. They notice new ideas, new technologies, new ways people live and think. And that quiet engagement does something powerful to the mind. It keeps it flexible. Modern neuroscience confirms that the human brain remains capable of growth well into old age. This ability is known as neuroplasticity. But there is a condition attached to it. The brain must continue encountering new experiences. When life becomes mentally repetitive, the same thoughts, the same conversations, the same habits, the brain slowly reduces activity in areas responsible for curiosity, learning, and adaptation. In simple terms, the mind begins to stiffen long before the body does. That is why some men appear older than they truly are, even when their physical health remains strong. Their thinking stopped evolving. They compare everything to the past. They resist change. And without realizing it, they quietly step away from the living world. But men who maintain vitality approach life differently. They adapt. Not because they abandon their values, but because they understand something simple and unavoidable. Life always moves forward. And if a man refuses to move with it, the world eventually moves on without him. You can see this mindset clearly in someone like Jeff Bezos. Even after building one of the most influential companies in modern history, Bezos continues to immerse himself in new industries: artificial intelligence, space exploration, emerging technologies that did not even exist a generation ago. His curiosity about the future has never really slowed down. At one point he summarized this mindset in a single line: "What's dangerous is not to evolve." Behind that sentence is a deeper psychological truth. Stagnation quietly accelerates aging. Curiosity slows it down. Long before neuroscience discovered neuroplasticity, the Stoics understood the same principle. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to escape into nostalgia or fantasy about the past. He wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." Within that reflection lies a simple discipline. Meet life as it is. Stay engaged with the moment you are actually living. Because when a man resists change, the body eventually mirrors that resistance. His movements grow rigid. His expression becomes fixed. His energy withdraws from the room. But when the mind remains open, the body reflects that openness. Conversation feels alive. The eyes stay alert. And there is a quiet sense that this man is still participating in life rather than observing it from the sidelines. If you ever notice yourself comparing the present to the past more and more often, or feeling disconnected from the way the world continues to change, it may not be age speaking. It may simply be familiarity tightening its grip. The answer is not abandoning the experience you've gained. It is expanding it. Learn something that didn't exist 20 years ago. Talk with people from a different generation. Explore ideas that challenge the way you've always understood the world. Each of these moments stretches the mind slightly beyond its comfort. And that stretch keeps the mind alive. Because youth, in many ways, is not measured by the number of years a man has lived. It is measured by whether he is still willing to live fully in the years he has. 6. They relate to women without seeking validation. There is something you begin to notice about men who age with quiet confidence. Their presence around women feels relaxed. Not forced. Not performative. Not anxious. They are not trying to prove anything. Many men carry a hidden tension when interacting with women, especially as they grow older. Some feel the need to impress. Some worry about being judged. Some feel the pressure to appear younger, stronger, or more successful than they truly feel inside. And that tension shows. The shoulders tighten. The voice changes. The body becomes slightly rigid. Even if the words sound confident, the nervous system is broadcasting insecurity. Psychology calls this approval-seeking behavior, the unconscious attempt to gain validation from others in order to confirm our sense of worth. But the moment a man depends on external approval, his presence loses its stability. He begins reacting instead of simply being. Men who maintain magnetism into later life approach relationships very differently. Their self-worth is not negotiated in the presence of a woman. It is already settled. So when they engage with women, they do so from curiosity rather than performance. They listen. They observe. They speak calmly. There is no need to impress, because they are not secretly asking for permission to feel valuable. And that quiet certainty changes everything about the interaction. You can see this kind of presence in men like Sean Connery. Even well into his later years, Connery carried an effortless confidence that had little to do with trying to appear youthful. He was comfortable with who he was. Comfortable with his age. Comfortable with silence. At one point he expressed this attitude simply. "I never wanted to be someone else. I am who I am." That sentence captures the foundation of authentic confidence. A man who accepts himself does not need to perform. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus once wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish or stupid." In other words, a man must be willing to exist without constantly managing other people's opinions. Because the moment a man becomes free from the need to impress, something subtle changes in his presence. His body relaxes. His humor becomes natural. Conversation flows more easily. And people, women included, feel more comfortable around him. This is not about manipulation or strategy. It is about internal stability. When a man no longer depends on approval, he becomes emotionally grounded. And grounded men carry a kind of calm magnetism that is difficult to imitate. If you ever notice tension in the way you speak to someone you want to impress, if you feel the urge to explain yourself too much, or to prove your worth through words or accomplishments, it may simply be the mind searching for external confirmation. The solution is not pretending to be more confident. It is remembering something simple. Your value is not negotiated in conversation. It is carried quietly in how you stand, how you speak, and how you treat others. And when a man truly understands that, his presence becomes lighter. Not because he is trying harder, but because he no longer needs to. 7. They keep their sense of desire alive. One of the quietest signs that a man is still deeply alive has nothing to do with how he looks. It has to do with whether he still desires life. Not desire in the sense of chasing endlessly. Not restlessness. But the quiet willingness to want something again. Many men slowly lose this without realizing it. Years pass. Responsibilities accumulate. Disappointments happen. And somewhere along the way, the mind begins to whisper a dangerous idea. This is probably as good as life gets. When that belief settles in, something inside a man begins to dim. The future stops feeling open. Days become predictable. Energy slowly drains from the body. Psychologists often describe this as a loss of forward orientation, the mental state in which a person no longer imagines meaningful experiences ahead of them. Without something to move toward, the nervous system gradually loses its sense of vitality. Life becomes maintenance instead of exploration. But men who remain vibrant protect something very different. They keep their sense of desire alive. They still want to experience things. A new idea. A meaningful project. A place they have never seen. The scale does not matter. What matters is the direction. Forward. You can see this clearly in men like David Attenborough. Well into his 80s and 90s, Attenborough continued traveling across the planet, documenting wildlife and exploring environments many people half his age would hesitate to enter. His voice carried the same quiet fascination with the natural world that it did decades earlier. At one point he reflected on this curiosity by saying, "The whole of life is a mystery." That sentence reveals something important. A man who still sees life as mysterious remains open to it. Long before modern psychology described motivation and purpose, the Stoics understood the importance of forward movement. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Behind those words lies a reminder. Life is not meant to be endured passively. It is meant to be engaged. When a man allows himself to want new experiences, even small ones, the mind shifts. Energy returns. The body responds. His posture changes. His eyes carry more focus. And there is a quiet sense that he is still moving towards something. But when desire disappears completely, the opposite happens. The body slows. Curiosity fades. Presence weakens. Because without something ahead of us, the mind quietly begins to retreat. If you ever notice your life feeling too predictable, too settled, too finished, it may not be exhaustion. It may simply be that desire has been neglected for too long. The answer is rarely dramatic. It begins with allowing yourself to want again. Start a project that interests you. Learn something you once thought was out of reach. Plan a journey, even if it is a small one. Give your mind something ahead of it. Because a man who still desires life does not move through the world like someone whose story is finished. He moves like someone who knows the next chapter has not been written yet. A man does not grow old simply because time passes. He grows old when curiosity fades. When the weight of the past still rests on his shoulders. When his energy is scattered everywhere. When his mind quietly closes itself to the world. But the man who keeps his curiosity, his presence, and his desire for life alive carries a vitality that time struggles to take away. As Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Stop debating what a strong man should look like. Simply become one. If you found this video meaningful, subscribe to Silent Stoic. So each day you grow stronger, calmer, and more grounded. And before you go, tell me this in the comments. Which of these habits do you think keeps a man truly young?